Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. We hope you've had a really nice, pleasant Sunday afternoon off. We're having a very special meeting tonight to discuss a really important topic for us, which is the idea of faith and politics and how they intertwine with each other, and why, as Christians, we should also be political. Before we get on that, a couple of little announcements that I want to make for you. First of all, we have another 100,000 of our leaflets arriving this week. Um, they are due to arrive on Wednesday, and it's our hope that over the course of the next few weeks, as we approach marching season, that we'll get out and about, get people out, handing out these leaflets to people at parades and around churches to try and keep growing the open letter that we currently have for our party leaders. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the party leader letter is calling for our party leaders to stay out of Stormont, to not form an executive, not elect a speaker, until the Secretary of State has repealed Section 9 of the Northern Ireland Executive Formation Act, and has given control over abortion back to the people who it belongs to, the people of Northern Ireland. So you'll notice at the bottom of the screen here, we have a link to the open letter. And if you just go to abolishabortionni.org/save Stormont, you can sign and read the letter there. We have a couple of guests with us tonight. So we've got Glenn Beattie and David Kurten joining us from the Heritage Party, and are very welcome to join us. The Heritage Party are a new political party who have started up recently in the UK, and we're going to be discussing with both these guys a little bit about how the party came into existence, and a little bit about their backgrounds as well. Before that, for those of you who aren't aware of Abolish Abortion NI, we are a Christian organization who seek to bring the gospel into conflict with a culture of death with regards to the issue of abortion. We're abolitionists, so we follow in the footsteps of abolitionists of the past, people like Wilberforce and Clarkson and William Lloyd Garrison, and we seek to bring our faith to play on this issue. We engage with churches, we engage in the political sphere, and we also engage with the public as well, by doing street outreaches and such. So we're going to get cracking right away. And as I said, welcome to both of you. Both have very different accents because they're both from very different parts of the UK. But hopefully you'll be able to understand Glenn. I think you'll be able to understand David, but Glenn might be a bit more of a challenge.
Not sure about that.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody can kind of understand as they listen in. Another thing we're doing tonight is we have the chat open on Facebook and YouTube. So if you have any questions for the guys that you want to ask, feel free to ask them in the chat on both Facebook and YouTube, and we can pass on some of the questions as we go. So first of all, we're here to talk about faith and politics. So I think probably the best place to start is a little bit of an introduction into you in terms of your faith, how you became a Christian, where that faith developed, and where it stands now. So David, I'll pass over to you first. As our furthest away guest, and then we'll bring Glenn in next.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of faith, I mean, I've been a Christian since I was a young boy. My family weren't specifically Christian, but I went to a Church of England primary school, and the teachers sort of ministered there and taught us the gospel, and it was just considered part of the culture. So I went along to the local village Methodist church and so on, and there were evangelists coming to the school. So I just accepted Christ, when I was 6, I think, as a young boy, and my faith has developed since then. So I've learned more. Obviously I'm 51 now, so a long time has gone by, but I've learned more as the years have gone by through going to youth group and being in Christian Union at the university and so on, and various churches throughout my life. And So that's how faith is developed. And obviously, as well, I got into politics too a few years ago. So I'll talk about that as well as we go.
Yep, no problem. And Glenn, you are a bit more local to us.
Yeah,
So a little bit about your background, if you will.
yeah, I grew up as well, just going to BB and the Boys Brigade, certain objects like that, and in the local church. But I wouldn't really call myself a Christian. Continued through my life, and got to a point in my life where I needed to accept Christ. About 6 years ago, I become a Christian, and I haven't looked back since. And so many doors are open to serve God in so many ministries, and this is the next thing that He's opened the door to, and I'll serve Him in this.
Yeah, and you're local, Glenn. So what church is it you're a member of at the minute?
I'm currently a member of Christ Encounters Tabernacle here just outside Portadown in Guildford. So it's Pentecostal church, and it's been very proactive in reaching out and doing different missions and different things like that. I was involved with Rusty Thomas as well when he was over there for the preaching and stuff. So yeah, it's very very proactive church.
No, we as Glenn said there, we first met whenever Rusty was over, and he was down in Christ Encounters for a few days as part of their conference down there, that they were having a revival conference. And for us, it was great to be able to go and see a church that was thriving and was very much alive. So it was lovely to see that. And I think one of the things that's going to run through one of the themes that's going to run through the whole of this evening is this idea of faith, and how important and influential our faith has been in terms of getting involved politically. Now, one thing that will be a little bit strange to people in Northern Ireland, because it doesn't tend to happen, is the idea of a political party who are active both on the UK mainland and also in Northern Ireland. So we're used to the idea of the Conservative Party and Labour and Liberal Democrats battling it out on the mainland, whereas here we have our own political parties who tend to work on local issues, but also will be elected to Westminster. So we'll talk a little bit about how that overlap, or how we arrived at that kind of overlap and being involved on both parts of the United Kingdom in a little while. But David, if you give us a wee bit of a background into your political past, your political present, and how we've arrived at the Heritage Party, and future, and what you hope to achieve as the leader of the party. Certainly for me, the place I know you best from is holding Sadiq Khan's feet to the fire constantly in London, and many videos that I've seen of you making him sweat were always something that provided a little bit of entertainment. But I'm sure that your political career is about much more than just giving Sadiq Khan a hard time. So give us a little bit of an oversight of where you've come from.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you've seen me hold Sadiq Khan to account, because there's a lot to hold to account there. My goodness. But anyway, look, I spent most of my time as an adult as a chemistry teacher. So I did a degree in St Andrews. I got a chemistry degree. Then I went into teaching, and I spent about 20 years as a teacher in various schools in this country and abroad. But I decided to get actively involved in politics about 2012, something like that. So actually, at the time, I was concerned about two things. I was concerned about the EU and where that was going, and how it was becoming more and more undemocratic and taking power away from people in a way that it shouldn't do. And I was concerned about political correctness and where that was going, and how it was the effects it was having on free speech and society, and just the values that were coming in with that were turning everything around. Obviously, as a Christian, I don't like to see the sort of politically correct values coming in, and also sort of with that the attempts to silence people who don't agree with the progressive liberal agenda, which is really an anti-Christian agenda in many senses. So the only party that I could see that sort of was representing both those things that I was concerned about was UKIP. So I joined UKIP, and that was back in the really good glory days of UKIP, sort of 2012 to 2016. And I was very actively involved there and fighting for to get the referendum, to win the referendum, and so on. And what I first stood for Parliament actually in 2015, and I stood against Harriet Harman in a London in a sort of no hope seat, but because it was one of Labour's safest seats. But it was really good to sort of stand against the Queen of political correctness, if you like. And sort of people spotted me there and said, well, why don't you stand for the London Assembly next year? And so I did. I put my name forward, and then I was given the second place on the proportional list for the London Assembly, and UKIP got 2 seats, which is fantastic, because then I got elected to the London Assembly, and I was on the London Assembly for 5 years. And that's where, I had the opportunity to ask Sadiq Khan all these kind of questions, which, I think everybody was like wanting to ask, but there was hardly anybody else or nobody else who was willing to ask the kind of questions that I would ask him, about transgenderism and about LGBT in schools, about the ban on abortion clinics, which was starting in West London. There was a motion in the London Assembly, and I was one of only 2 or 3, I think, out of 25 that opposed a ban on peaceful protests outside these abortion centres and so on. They all, Sadiq Khan and everyone, supported it. And so, I could do that, and I was very happy to do that. While I was on the London Assembly, sadly, the story of UKIP. Won the referendum, but then Farage left, and it sort of like descended into infighting, and then sort of it sort of imploded on itself. It still exists, but it's not doing anything much anymore. So I went independent, and then I started the Heritage Party. Because I'd always hoped to turn the UKIP anyway into a socially conservative party, because I think that's what the country needs, and there just simply isn't one. The Conservatives are not conservative; they're certainly not socially conservative, and by that, what I would mean is being financially responsible, but also upholding our culture and our values and our Christian heritage, and certain Christian principles that I now ask all my candidates who are standing for the Heritage Party. Look, do you believe that there are 2 sexes rather than 100 genders? And do you support marriage being a man and a woman? And do you support life being from conception? And are you pro-life? And I make it clear that we're a pro-life, anti-abortion party. We're for traditional family values and so on. But there was nothing at all, really, apart from specifically, religious parties that maybe you support that. But we need something that is not specifically a Christian or religious party, but is a socially conservative party. So I set the Heritage Party up in 2020, sort of April 2020 is when I started working on it. And then we registered as a company, and we registered with the Electoral Commission. We got approval from the Electoral Commission for Great Britain in October 2020. So then we could stand in the London elections in 2021, local elections and so on. But we've just earlier this year, also we applied for registration in Northern Ireland. And then that's fantastic, because Glenn was our very first candidate in Northern Ireland in the Northern Ireland Assembly elections in this May. So standing there in upper band. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. And I'm continuing to build the party. So I'm working on, I'm working full time. I'm not paid. I'm sort of living a little bit by faith at the moment, if you like. But I do believe this is, my calling at this time to actually, build this. This is what we need in the political system, because the other parties are just irredeemable, in Great Britain. But I think, look, it's very interesting there, John, you mentioned the different parties in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but it never used to be that way. I think you go back 50 or 60 years and you had the Conservatives and Labour, they stood themselves. They were parties for the whole of the UK, but they've sort of withdrawn from Northern Ireland, and then you've got the different Northern Ireland parties. But I think, I believe in I believe in Northern Ireland being part of the UK, and so we need to actually say, well, we're for the union, if you like, so we're going to stand in Northern Ireland as well and represent those socially conservative values all over the UK as well, so that we're not sort of divided into two. So we're one nation. We shouldn't be divided as we are. So I think that's why we decided to go for Northern Ireland as well and register there too.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of that is so good to hear, because one of the things that's kind of prevalent in the political sphere is just this idea of anybody who holds any kind of socially conservative values are shouted down, and those who may even hold those conservative values are afraid almost to share them, for fear of the backlash that can come afterwards. And certainly this week we've experienced some of that backlash and that cancel culture here in our organization, even in the past few days, and threats and all sorts of things for sharing our faith effectively. So it's great to hear somebody and a party who are going to say, well, we're willing to stand up and tell the truth, and take whatever comes with it, no matter what the cost. So it's lovely to hear. Now, I think Glenn is a bit outnumbered tonight, because you are a former teacher and I am a current teacher. So, Glenn, as far as I know, you're not a teacher, but we'll give you a Bible for this evening. But certainly for me as a teacher, as a father, one of the things that worries me in Northern Ireland is the continual slip towards secularism in our politics in Northern Ireland. The slide that we see in society, and our churches are effectively mute on these issues and in the political sphere. And those who hold these kind of values are becoming marginalized in the political sphere. For me, one of the biggest worries is our sex education in Northern Ireland. We have a sex education system in Northern Ireland where each school there's a kind of set minimum curriculum that you have to cover, and each school is then allowed to tailor the RSE program to match their own school's ethos. So very many of our schools in Northern Ireland would still have a strong Christian ethos and a strong Christian background, and there's a drive at the moment to change a lot of that, and certainly to change our RSE program. One of the scariest things is that the Secretary of State, under the regulations that pushed in abortion on Northern Ireland, also is required to change our sex education curriculum as well, in order to include promotion of abortion as normal. And although there is no requirement on them to do it, once they're doing that, they will also include all of the other radical things, the LGBT agenda, and everything else that you in England have experienced and continue to experience. So for me, as a teacher, as a father, it is incredibly worrying at this time. So Glenn, we're going to come to you, and if David's given us a bit of a background on the Heritage Party. So I'm guessing you haven't been involved in politics since 2012. So what brought you into politics? Why did you get involved? And give us a little bit of background about why the Heritage Party and not, in Northern Ireland, we have this kind of very closed shop in terms of political parties. And certainly, if you wanted to be elected as an MLA or as a councillor, the safest route to go down is to join one of the kind of socially conservative unionist parties. The current is why the Heritage Party instead?
Yeah, well, I think for years, down through the years, here has been either two tribes here. Either you're from the Nationalists or you're from the Unionist Party. And for me, through the last 2 years as a Christian, I was looking to identify with a party that held my what I believed in and what I wanted to believe in as well, regarding the party. So over the lockdowns, I seen David calling a lot of things out. He was voicing his opinions on these things, and I logged on to the manifesto when I seen the manifesto, and everything in the manifesto I agreed with. And I reached out to David, and through much prayer as well, this last year, it's come to fruition, and we've fielded a candidate here with myself, and with a small growing gathering as well here that's really interested in all the things that we're calling out and what we're getting involved in, because a lot of things here was abortion wasn't on the scope for a lot of parties. It wasn't a priority. We've changed our manifesto this year to come in line with being the only UK party that can actually fight this UK wide, not just over the 6 counties. So that's my thought on that as well. And again, the family nation motto that we pro-life motto that we were campaigning for as well. That I couldn't argue with it, and it was just exactly what our nation needs, exactly what we need as a nation as well. So that's my views on it, Mark, and that's why I got involved in politics. I just had a earning to do something, or to get involved with something, rather than just sit in our hands and do nothing and watch people just be forced into their houses and not even blink or just accept things. So that's why I got involved, Mark.
Super. And before we came on tonight, I was telling the guys about the distractions that I sometimes face sitting here in my kitchen, and the dog has just started barking right now. So please excuse any background noise. But one of the things that you were saying there was about the tribal nature of politics in Northern Ireland, where it's either you're unionist or nationalist, and it is effectively turned into a sectarian headcount in our elections, because it's very much, if you don't vote for us, you're going to get them, and we see now that Sinn Féin and the DUP have effectively sliced up the market. We saw in the Stormont election there, a lot of the smaller parties suffered as a result of this. You had the Green Party lose 2 seats. There were, TUV were expected to gain a few, but didn't gain any. The Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP suffered. And we had a kind of shift towards just the two main parties. So, as a party, how does the Heritage Party plan to make themselves attractive to those who are socially conservative in Northern Ireland, but without appealing to that sectarian headcount that we have seen in Northern Ireland politics develop over the last 20 years? I don't know who wants to answer that, David or Glenn.
I can start, and then if Glenn wants to add anything afterwards, that's great. I mean, but what I would say is, first and foremost, we set up to be a socially conservative party. So our manifesto is written in terms of positive principles, which I think the whole country needs in order to sort of get back and restore our nation to some kind of sanity and common sense. And I think people can relate to that, whatever side of the divide they're in Northern Ireland and so on. Like in England, obviously I'm from England, and there isn't the same sort of, historical animosity between Protestant and Catholic. And we have a lot of Catholics who are pro-life, very, very passionately pro-life, who've become members of the Heritage Party, and even in some places are county coordinators, and that's fantastic. So I think hopefully that can translate over to Northern Ireland as well, because people just see the principles that we have. We're for traditional family values, we're for a culture of life. I mean, those are the two major socially conservative things, but also we're for financial responsibility, which you don't get from other parties wherever they are on the political spectrum, or or the sort of divide and self-sufficiency in skills and equality before the law and national sovereignty and all of these things. So I hope that people will look at that, and specifically in our section on a culture of life, which is where sort of our policies on abortion are. We have just modified that recently, because at the beginning it was sort of written in language which was it wasn't really totally specific. I just said at the beginning we would try to reduce the number of abortions, but we've actually changed that this year. So now we're specifically committed to ending the laws that make abortion legal, both in Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So whether you're Catholic or Protestant in Northern Ireland, if you want to end abortion, then we're the party for you. And I think that obviously that's a massive issue, and it's a really big issue at the moment, because you've got the Conservatives and Labour over in Westminster obviously trying to impose their progressive will on Northern Ireland. So we can obviously, being the only sort of UK-wide pro-life party, I think that's a very, very valuable thing to have, to be able to vote for us as the Heritage Party in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. And Glenn, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think in Northern Ireland people are very, very quick to pull the shutters down if they see any sort of side. And it's like a punch and judy exercise throughout Stormont. As you said, Mark, if you don't vote for them, you'll get them. And at the end of the day, Northern Ireland needs a new party that is neutral on some issues. But regarding UK and Union, we are very much a UK party, because we have been blessed down through centuries with laws and people that God has used to bring not only the gospel but our common law around the world to people. So yeah, it's a tricky issue, but again, we are committed to working and being conservative for everybody. A Protestant or Catholic or whatever, whoever is coming in the country right now at the minute as well. People are coming in this country for a reason as well, because it's a brilliant country, it's a brilliant nation, and we want to keep it that way.
Super. Yeah, it is a tricky one in Northern Ireland. The kind of to work your way around. And I think for me, one of the hardest things is that when it comes to election time, that's the first thing on the agenda. It's where do I stand on the union? Where do I stand on Northern Ireland's place in the union, or should it be part of the Republic of Ireland? And that's everything that our elections tend to revolve around. Whereas, what I think people in Northern Ireland are really looking for is people who are going to take a stand on the issues that matter to them, and the issues that really matter. And in Northern Ireland, we do face a challenge with breaking down that kind of sectarianism that has embedded itself within our politics and trying to promote politics that is going to be beneficial to everybody across society. So that's one of the things that I think a lot of people will be attracted towards. So you've already mentioned a little bit, David, the issue of abortion, and for us, that is the number one issue. We recognize it's not the number one issue for everybody, but for us as an organization, it's the number one issue. But we met a few weeks ago. We met a few weeks ago about to talk about the issue and talk around some issues. And before doing that, I looked at the manifesto online, and for me, the big part that really struck me was the part about equality under the law. It wasn't the part about abortion and life. It was about equality under the law. Really caught my attention. So give us a little bit of background first before we get on to the issue of abortion. Give us a little bit of the background about equality under the law and why it's so important to the Heritage Party.
Well, I mean, why we got this section in there? I mean, it was mainly to address the sort of issue of inequality coming in through political correctness, and you've got this concept of hate crime which has come in. So it's if you are if you have a protected characteristic, for example, so if you're in one of these groups that's considered a victim group, so you're gay, or you're black, or you're a woman, or you're a Muslim, or you're some other minority, you tend to go, your case will get fast tracked by the police, and it will get fast tracked through the courts. And if you can prove that a crime has an element of homophobia or transphobia or racism in it, then the person who's the perpetrator gets a harsher sentence. They get becomes an aggravated crime. What I was saying is that this is wrong. You know, a crime is a crime, whether it's aggravated or not. Whoever the victim is, we should treat all crimes seriously. So every crime should have the penalty of an aggravated crime because they're all serious crimes. We shouldn't treat some crimes more seriously than others because of the characteristics of the victim and the characteristics of the perpetrator. There needs to be equal justice, and everyone needs to be treated equally before the law by the police and before the courts. So you have equal status when you go before the courts. So that was what that section was really written to address. Because the whole sort of concept of hate crime and hate speech is very, very corrosive to society, because people can point at you and say, oh, he told a homophobic joke or something, and it was just a joke. It was private or something, or he wrote a transphobic limerick, and the police will come round and knock at your door, and then they'll try to drag you through the courts. But someone who's committed a real crime, like a burglary, you know, try to get the police out to find someone who's committed a burglary and to get your stuff back. They're not interested. So everything is sort of like upside down because of these concepts that there need to be everything. The law and the way that it operates just needs to be put back to what it should be, that we're all equal before the law and all crime is taken seriously.
Yeah, and I think for me, you know, and from our perspective, as an organization, you know, when we talk about abortion, our stance on abortion is very, very simple. All human beings should be protected equally under the law with regards to abortion. So the laws that protect all three of us from being murdered should be applied equally to all human beings, including those who are in the womb. And you know, it's a pretty simple stance to take, but it's one that is even controversial with people who are pro-life. In certain circumstances, there was a Bill of Equal Protection in the United States a couple of weeks ago in Louisiana. That Louisiana is a very conservative state, massive Republican majority in their Senate. The bill got passed out of committee and was going to the Senate floor for debate. And in response to this Bill of Equal Protection that would have applied the laws against murder for equally to all human beings, there were 70 pro-life organizations signed an open letter saying no. The stance of the pro-life industry and the pro-life movement is that the women are always victims. The women who are partaking in abortion are always victims, and there should never be a criminal penalty for abortion. So, for us as abolitionists, that doesn't match up to our beliefs, because we believe that all human beings are equally valuable, and all human beings should be protected equally under the law, regardless of their sex or regardless of their age, their location, their color, their social status. All human beings are equally valuable in the eyes of God, which ultimately then dictates that they're equally valuable under the eyes of the law. So it's bringing it back into this kind of idea that our faith and our faith beliefs dictate what we want to see the law look like. in our country, because we know that it matches up with God's law. So in terms of abortion specifically, you mentioned how your parties changed their manifesto over the last little while. So give us a bit of a background into why that change happened, why it was about reducing abortion, and now it mentions more specifically that you're going to try to end it.
Yeah, so what at the beginning, I was trying to write it in a way that would not put people off who didn't agree with some of the socially conservative principles. I spoke to lots of people when I wrote the manifesto, and I had some people saying, well, we agree on all of this stuff, but try to write the sections on abortion so that it doesn't put people off, and it leaves the door open for sort of first trimester abortion without actually specifically saying, so it's not going to put them off. So I had some people say that to me, so I wrote down, I think the words were, we will do everything we can to reduce the number of abortions in the UK, so without specifically saying what we would actually do to change that. But what I found was that then those people were still unhappy and they left the party anyway, because they still didn't like it, even though we'd sort of made some concessions in the language. So I just thought, well, look, this is ridiculous. You're not going to win with people who are, you're not trying to compromise. It's not going to win. So I just thought, well, I have to be very, very specific in what I say. And I went to an event, a Heritage Party event, sort of an open meeting, a couple of months ago, and when I was there, again, I was talking about the Heritage Party and so on. But then there was some people coming in from outside, and I think they were there to kind of stir up a little bit of trouble. So they started asking me, about pro-life and traditional marriage and what's your stance on this? And I said, look, well, we're pro-life or anti-abortion. And one of the people that said, oh, I think you're going to have some problems with that. And I could see him after the meeting going round trying to talk to everybody who was a member or thinking about members, particularly targeting women, to tell them, did you know that he's pro-life? And trying to stop them from joining the party, tried to discourage them from joining the party on the basis that I was pro-life. And then I had some people write to me afterwards and say, I'm not happy about this. What exactly is your stance? Because they'd either missed that section in the manifesto or they'd read it and they skipped over it. Some people said, so what exactly would you do? And so I thought, well, I'm going to need to be much more courageous, much more clear about what we stand for. So we changed the manifesto from saying we'll try to reduce the number of abortions, which was a little bit of a concession, a little bit wishy-washy, to saying, well, actually what we will do is we will repeal the laws that make abortion legal. And we'll also repeal the laws that allow experimentation on embryos, because that's a sort of another connected issue. So then, everybody knows exactly where we stand, and there's no confusion. So that's why we changed it. And I think that's a change for the better.
Yeah, it's a brave change, because in the world of politics, so much is about compromise, and so much is about numbers. Because effectively, or as a politician, you can't get elected unless you got the numbers. But for us, when we look at the past, we look at social change in the past. What God has done is He's used faithful men, not careful men. He's used men who've shown faith and have been willing to take a stand, even when people were against them, in order to effect that change. And if you look at Wilberforce's campaign to end the slave trade, Wilberforce could have taken the route of, well, I'm going to compromise a little bit. I'm going to allow some slavery to take place in order to try to reduce little bits of it. But what he did, and if you read his stuff, it's all based on his faith. If you read his speech his first speech in Parliament about ending the slave trade. It is all about God and how God views these people, and he was unrelentingly, uncompromisingly calling for a complete and immediate end to the slave trade because of what God says in His law. And he was heavily defeated the first time he brought a bill of total abolition. And he continued and continued and continued and continued until the job was done. And a large part of that was changing social attitudes and changing social perspectives. But a large part of that was God rewarding faithfulness as well. And yes, as a politician, I want to encourage you to not always be thinking about the numbers, but to be thinking about what is right, and what is worthy of God's blessing, because He will increase, He will multiply blessings on those who are faithful to Him. And we're talking here about a brand new party in a country of 50, 60 million people, who are securing very few votes at the moment, but that faithfulness will be rewarded in the long run. So, Glenn, we'll come to you for just stop you falling asleep. I noticed there while you were talking, David, that Glenn is sipping from a can of orange Fanta, and I am sipping from a can of lemon Fanta. So I just thought I'd clarify that we are not sponsored by Fanta tonight. Glenn, we'll come to you. What about, so give us a little bit of a background into your views on abortion in terms of Northern Ireland, your stance here, because one of the things that David has and people in England have experienced is they've been kind of desensitized a lot because they've had 50 years, almost 10 million children killed by abortion in the mainland, and it's become such a part of everyday life in England. You're talking 800 children a day in England, that there are very few people actually talking about it, and certainly very few politically actually making it an issue. So we here in Northern Ireland are a bit different in that this is new to us. So how much of a factor did that play in you getting involved in politics, and what do you hope to achieve here?
Yeah, growing up in this country, we were always underneath a sort of church umbrella, if you could class it as that, where no matter if you were from the Catholic side or Protestant side, we both knew that God deemed us as being wrong, and as being murder. So anyone in their heart of hearts would actually review that and think as well, like, this is wrong. Deep down it's wrong, and it's an issue that's close to me as well, because it's just I can't believe that people would replace life with death. I know there's sensitive issues around the subject, and there's different people with different rights, but no one really remembers or wants to put forward the rights of that little human being inside his mummy's tummy. And I think when we look at our nation and we look at what's been happening this last while, we see people not loving life. It's creating worthlessness in people. And for me, as a Christian, God has given me life. I want to share it with others. No matter how dark the world gets, or no matter how dark politics gets, we must be the light in the darkness, and must be the salt as well. So, yeah, I'd love to see this repealed UK wide, unequivocally, and I'd like to see our nation return to righteousness as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there is really interesting in terms of politics, and and righteousness, because one of the things that we're always told when we're on the street, usually people shouting it at us, it's how dare you push your view on somebody else. If you don't like abortion, don't have one, but don't stop somebody else from having one. And you saying there about this idea of righteousness, and our country coming back to righteousness. A lot of righteousness in the past was based on Christian values, and the Christian values that permeated throughout our politics, and the political sphere. And in general, if you look at the common law, it is based on God's law. And it is based on Christian values in the past, and we've been eroding that over the course, certainly over the course of the last 50 years. We've seen a massive erosion of our laws in the mainland and also here in Northern Ireland, as well, and a lot of that comes down to the church, and this unwillingness to get involved in politics and to be political, as a church. And a lot of people say to me that churches shouldn't be involved in politics and Christians shouldn't be involved in politics. But ultimately, for me, politics is simply legislating morality. And whose morality are we going to legislate? Are we going to legislate a secular, humanistic morality? Are we going to legislate God's morality? We're not talking about living in a theonomy here, but we are talking about living in a democracy that is based on righteousness and justice, for all human beings, and being treated equally together. So it's a really interesting one. So what would you say to encourage, any Christians who are watching tonight? And I think there are a lot of Christians who kind of think, I have these socially conservative values, but the best I can do is to go out and vote for somebody and hope that they represent me and my values in the future. So what opportunities are there within the Heritage Party for people who might be watching tonight or watching this later on, who say, well, these kind of values match up to my values, and would like to get involved further?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's great if someone thinks, well, I'm going to go and vote for someone who's got the values that I have, but we need people to vote for. And, obviously I can't do it by myself. I'm the leader of the Heritage Party, and Glenn there is the leader in Northern Ireland, but we need dozens, hundreds, thousands of people to join us to actually stand as candidates. And it's something that I thought of, and I thought, but I never thought that it was possible to be a candidate. I mean, how do I do that? Because you'd see people on the television and they're on the other side of the screen, if you like, and they're in this like really high place in Westminster. They've got connections and they've got through the system somehow, and they've managed to become an MP or something. But actually, being on the other side, if you like, being behind the screen, they're just normal people. I mean, they're no different to anybody else. They just sort of happen to, do the right procedure and get elected. So the thing is with us, the Heritage Party, we're a new party, and there's so much opportunity to get involved and to become a candidate, in the early stages. There are local elections in Northern Ireland next May, in the 11 districts I think you've got now in Northern Ireland. So there will be, I imagine, over 1,000 spots for councillors up for election next year. So there's so much scope to get involved right now. And the great thing about standing in local elections is it doesn't cost anything. There's no deposit. So you can enter the election for free. And, you could just be a paper candidate, which means you get your name on the ballot paper by filling in the forms. And then you're there. And then everybody else has the chance to vote for someone from the Heritage Party.
Yes.
So often I think, if you say you want someone to vote for, often you're going to be the answer to your own request, if you like, at the early stages, because we need candidates now to stand in the elections. But really, sometimes I find, and I go to churches, I talk to Christians, and they would say, well, yeah, politics is not for me. It's not to get involved in. It's not something that Christians should be getting involved in. I would say that's absolute nonsense. I mean, what about Wilberforce? You know, you mentioned earlier in the discussion, you know, if Wilberforce as a Christian hadn't got involved in politics, perhaps we'd still have slavery. But he did, and many other people who were Christians back in the Great Awakening and afterwards in the 19th century and so on got involved and were agents for wonderful social change and, you know, making the country work far more on Christian principles and so on. You know, today you can be from any other religion and you're celebrated. You know, people say, oh, it's wonderful, isn't there? There's a Sikh and there's a Jew and there's a Muslim and whatever in the House of Commons. But then you say you're a Christian and people sort of have this attitude in the sort of secular media. Oh, don't talk about that. Keep quiet about your faith if you're a Christian. Well, you know, if you're going to succumb to that, then we're never going to get any influence and we're never going to change things for the better. So we have to get involved and actually get past that and actually start fighting for the kingdom of God in politics and to actually make good laws. Because we've had so many years of people making bad laws. And, you know, I've had enough of it. I've totally had enough. So I'm going to do whatever I can to get in there with a team of 650 people and turn this country around. So what I would say to anyone watching is please just come and join us. And if you've never thought about getting into politics before, or you've thought it's too hard, it's not possible, I don't know the way in, we're your way in. Okay, and you can stand for us in Northern Ireland if you believe in our manifesto and so on. And then we'll go on and hopefully get into Westminster as well.
Yeah, perfect. And Glenn, do you want to give us a little bit of detail on how people can get in touch with the Heritage Party and register an interest here in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, absolutely. We are on our own website, so that's www.heritagepartyni.org. You can log on there and become a member, or you can send me an email at info@heritagepartyni.com as well. And the mainland is heritageparty.org. So then it follows the exact same process through. Okay.
Perfect. And you know, for us, it's interesting because this is you know, this fight to abolish abortion is not just one that should be taking place here in Northern Ireland. As a United Kingdom, it's one that we should be embarking on together, and also let's not forget our neighbours in the south as well, who have had this recently legalised there. So for with you guys in terms of the mainland, you know, we're more than happy to lend whatever hand we can have here. Certainly, when you look at Wilberforce and the fight to abolish the slave trade, there were abolitionist societies popped up right across the United Kingdom to raise public awareness and to get people politically engaged. So we, you know, if we can lend you any hand with that and any abolitionist societies as well, yeah, we're more than happy to help you out. So thank you guys, both of you, for coming on. We really appreciate your time this evening and for taking the time out to have a chat with us. And share some of your beliefs and the background into your party and what you're trying to achieve. So we're delighted that you came along and had a chat, and we'll hopefully speak to you soon. For everybody else who's joined us tonight online and watching, please remember that we have the open letter still running. We have another 100,000 leaflets arriving this week. So please contact us on info@abolishabortionni.org if you'd like to get some for your churches or for your local area, and we will get them to you, and you can get them distributed. And if you haven't already signed the letter, please go online, sign the letter, share it with everybody that you know, And let's continue to build on that pressure and that voice that we can bring to our political leaders at Stormont. So we'll speak to you all again very soon, and